I'm messing up again. Y'all see, I gotta push my cup further out to the side. It shouldn't be in the shot. What's going on? I'm Marcus. Yo, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Today's video going to be interesting because, hey, yeah, I know. I always like to bring a guest on who have a different perspective than I do because sometimes, DFD could be a little bit out there. So I want to make sure that it's somebody who can, give me the other side, give me a different perspective. Because when it's just me on here talking, y'all already y'all already know what y'all gonna get. As always, I gotta throw out the disclaimer. I am a licensed attorney. What does that mean? That means that I'm an attorney. That means I'm barred in a couple of places. But what it means most importantly is I'm not your attorney. So this isn't legal or financial advice, just giving my opinion and takes on topics, attorney reactions to current events. And in this video, we're going to take a look at some kind of trending news is interesting, but we're going to look at the financial aspect of it and just talk a little bit about the overall concept itself. Adoption. Should you adopt a stepchild? What's the financial implications? Is it generally a good or bad financial move to make? I can probably answer this in one question, but in about 5 seconds. But hey, we got to talk about it. We got to punt it around. I am pleased to have a guest on the show who's going to provide some interesting gems, and they are a person who has the skill set to do it. Her name is Christina Cardozo. She is a financial coach. Hey, she's a math coach as well, which is something that DFD could have used in his latter years. But hey, I eventually figured it out. But she's going to give us some game while we're talking through on the show. I'm going to drop the link to her podcast, to her website. And I checked out her website too. I know a lot of y'all out there, especially the ladies, y'all love to travel. So she got a unique aspect on teaching financial literacy to families, making sure that the family unit is the very first unit who can indoctrinate the children with those financial lessons. And it's dope because she's an educator. She's has skilled and experience with creating a lesson plan, putting something into context, giving clear talking points so that people can see what the impact, the end result is. So I'm definitely happy, pleased, blessed to have her on the show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and tag Christina in. What's going on, sis? How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on to talk about this and to react to this video that we can watch at the same time. Is going to be interesting. Shout out to YouTube channel Pink Book Lessons. I gotta shoot her something on her Cash App because she always give me great content that I could review on and flip it from a finance standpoint. Now, before we dive in, go ahead, introduce yourself, tell a little bit about yourself, and let people know where they can find you at.
Hey guys, so my name is Christina. You can find me mostly on IG at She Runs the Numbers. I am a math educator. I've been a math educator since I graduated from college, or even since I was a kid. I've been obsessed with numbers. So I still work in the school system full time, and I'm pretty much educating mostly teachers, making sure that they teach math the way they should be right now. I'm the one at parties that parents are like, oh, it's your fault. The reason why this math is so different, why it's going to take so long. So, I'm like having conversations with friends and family at parties. I'm very passionate about education. I'm very passionate about math, and I'm also very passionate about financial literacy. And I see it firsthand in the schools how there's a lack of financial literacy knowledge. Um, and so I like to speak on those topics. I like to educate other teachers who actually have to teach financial literacy.
Right.
You know, there's teachers who have to run a business course, but they've never actually had a business themselves, right? So they need a lot of support and guidance too. So sometimes I like to, work with those kind of teachers. Also, a real estate investor, currently just closed on, we're up to 10 properties now in our real estate portfolio. And I stay busy, and I got two boys. They keep me busy.
Okay, dope. That's dope. Okay, yeah. So we definitely gonna have to have you back to talk some real estate investor. It's interesting the strategies that people they take. Some people I used to take the door strategy where I was worried about how many doors I got, but then I got a little bit more conservative and I was like, you know what? one completely paid off door is better than three doors that got a mortgage on it. So I kind of revamped my approach to how I approach investing in real estate. So yeah, we definitely gonna have some more hardcore financial stuff to talk about. Before we dive into the topic, I gotta ask: are you the person I could blame for this new math that I don't understand? Like, no, when I was young, we did it this way. What is all these things y'all do?
So first of all, it's not new math, it's new strategies.
Right,
Same
right.
math, but new
Okay.
strategies. But I will tell you, because I started off teaching high school and college, and now I work in an elementary school coaching other teachers. And I will say that the teachers who are learning it now appreciate it. And everybody's saying, man, like if I would have learned it like this from the beginning, even the teachers are saying that. Then they were like, I just would have got it. It would have clicked. I wouldn't have struggled in high school and in college. So sure, you can blame
Yeah.
me.
Okay. All right. I was like, I saw it and I was like, what in the HE double hockey sticks? What's going on, Aaron? I appreciate you tuning in. The number of people I work with that teach in the area, they have a degree but have never actually worked or done the job is shocking. I like, honestly, I think that's common. Like, it's a lot of times, like, especially, you see at the higher education level, you see professors who given all this, they teaching constitution law and criminal justice and criminal law and all these things and never argue the case about anything. They just kind of teach theory. So I don't know. I think that's actually common when you start to look in academia. I think it's a different skill set of being able to teach something versus actually being able to do it. And some people got both, and some people only got one. You know what I mean? It's some great teachers of criminal law, but I damn sure wouldn't want them to represent me.
So true.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right, in today's video, we're going to talk about, family finances, and we're just going to talk about, is it a good or bad thing generally to adopt a stepchild? Okay. Now, I wanted to have somebody else on to give another take, but I like to look at the data. I like the facts. So I wanted to look when I saw the story initially, I thought, like, how often is this happening? So it's something that doesn't happen very often. Okay. Generally, step parents aren't adopting stepchildren. The statistics are about 5%. 5% of the time, you'll have a step parent who actually adopts a stepchild. Now, I wanted to dive, me personally, after having a conversation with one of the homies, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper in that stats because I was interested in knowing what was the gender breakup of those who adopt. Because I don't know for certain, but I feel like it's more of a thing that's probably done from the male side point of view. I think it just kind of makes sense. That's my personal opinion, but I couldn't find a data point that broke it down to women adopt this much, men adopt this much. Well, I found data that showed men adopt at higher rates, but I couldn't find data associated with the adoption of stepchildren. That's a completely different data point than just kind of adopting in general. But I don't know. I think my personal opinion is I think that of those who adopt stepchildren, it probably would be something that is probably more likely to happen with a male because I think is that wanting to include everybody under the nest, under the wing type of thing. And I feel like that concept probably comes more from the male side. I don't have the data points to put it up, but like I just don't see. I can see as a guy how I would do that to want to include it, but I don't know. That's just my personal take on it. So, but I didn't have the numbers to support it, and they didn't have any studies out there to show it. But I would be shocked if it's anything counter to that, just based on. I think that's just more of a thing that the person who's the male is more likely to do and is consistent with this story that we're about to play. That's just my initial thoughts on the adoption, how frequent it happens, and the data points that I could find on it. Now, what are your thoughts in general before we even watch the video? Because I know it's not a yes or no answer, it's a depends. What are your first thoughts on good idea or bad idea to adopt a child? What's your take before we even watch the video?
So I think it's a good idea. Obviously, a lot depends on the child, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes us as adults and parents, we tend to think like, is it a good idea or a bad idea? But a lot also depends on the child. Does the child want it, and so forth. And I think even, from my own personal experience, I realized that I wanted it even more the older I got. So by teenage years
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then young adult years, I realized like I, wanted my stepdad to adopt me legally.
Right.
Because the more mature I got, the more I realized that, wow, my biological father ain't around. He's been around since I was 5 years old. And, then my parents end up having other siblings, and so I was the one that wasn't, legally, even though he is not like he treated me any
Right.
differently.
Right. Right. Right.
um but still, coming from that point, I would say yes, I think it's a better idea to legally adopt. And I feel like, I don't know, I just think as a child, the child just feels more special that way,
Right.
especially when there's other siblings around.
Right. And I think that's a fair point. Something you said was one of the first things that popped into my head because as soon as I saw this, and of course I got to reach out to the network and ask, like, yo, y'all hear this? You know anybody who's doing this? What's going on? What's going on? And I've I think it was key what you said that it's probably best when that child gets older because they can actually think about it more. They know the implications. They know really what it is. And I tell you, I as I asked around, I got a horror story. Well, it wasn't a horror story, but a guy adopted his stepson when his stepson was really young, like really young. Now, stepson, the biological father was he's here, but he's not there. If that makes sense, he's walking amongst the living, but he's just not there doing anything. So dad is a good guy. Not a jerk, not abusive. Good guy. Him and trying to make that child feel included, he adopts the child. The child takes on his last name, and I think this is, I can only speak from a male perspective. You know what I mean? So I know if it were me, I understood why he felt like this completely. But as that child got older, he actually resented his stepfather for doing that because he felt as if he was trying to take away his identity. And that's something that I was like, yo, that feeling to me makes sense, because that decision was made and he really didn't have an input at that young of age. It was something that, his mother and his father was like, okay, that's what we're going to do. So I thought what you said of wait until they get older so they can give their input was definitely something that's smart and something that probably should be done most times, unless maybe if the biological father is deceased or something, that could, not saying it will, but that could be another factor to consider. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm. So let me go ahead and hold. I like to get on these comments. $750. Good grief! Woo! The assessment fee for adoption is $750. If adopting from another state or territory, the fee is over $5,000 plus a $2,300 supervision fee. They don't. Hey, they not. The government gonna get theirs even if you try to be an outstanding step.
And I will say from experience, they don't make things easy,
Right.
And
Right.
I'm in Jersey, and I'll speak a little bit on my case. So I think it was like a mutual thing. My stepdad wanted to adopt me. I wanted him to adopt me. But again, it wasn't until I was like more mature and I realized like, man, where has my biological father been? Because when I was a kid, I might see him 2, 3 times a year. I would see him for Christmas, for my birthday. He would give me gifts, and I think he's this great guy, but he would stand me up all the time. And then after I realized that pattern, once I was a preteen, then teen, then I'm like,
Right.
wow, my stepdad has always been here. And then actually, when I was an adult, because I think my stepdad didn't want to put that pressure on me, even though he said he would adopt me, but we just never officially did it. And so I
Right. Right.
decided
Right.
for Father's Day one day, I was like, I gave him like as a gift. I'm like, I'm gonna start the paperwork for adoption. And I remember trying to go through the process, and it was so complicated and confusing. Like I couldn't figure things out. Like they don't make things easier. If they're gonna throw a big expense like that and like
Right, right.
not make things clear, I can understand why the percentage is really low.
Yeah, yeah. It is something that's complicated, and like you said, it's not like you just getting a name change or something. There's an entire process that could be taxing. Let's go ahead, cue this video up. The video is of Eva Marcel and her son out. I mean, her husband, ex-husband, soon to be ex-husband, attorney, and he adopted his stepchild. It ended kind of crazy. We're going to talk about it a little bit. We kind of gave a good prerequisite to it, but let's go ahead and pull up the video. Again, shout out to at Pink Book Lessons. Great channel. Y'all definitely need to check it out too.
Actor Lance Gross for a couple of years. Then she moved on to rapper Flo Rida. After that, it was Kevin McCall. That was a toxic relationship. She really didn't know him at all before getting pregnant by him, which is always a no-no. You never go around making babies with men who are not committed to you.
Fair.
Especially don't make babies with men you don't even know. Eva admitted that she didn't know him like that and accused him of DV. Kevin, who admitted to DV with another woman, denied DV with Eva. So after Kevin McCall, Eva started dealing with an attorney in Atlanta, Michael Sterling. Around that time, her daughter with Kevin was about 1 and 2 years old. Eva alienated Kevin, and although they never really had a decent relationship, she even denied him the opportunity to have a relationship with his daughter. And by the way, her daughter looks just like Kevin McCall. Eva started dating Michael Sterling and basically introduced him into her daughter's life as her father. Michael Sterling was an advisor to Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, and when Reed was ending his final term, Michael decided to run for mayor of Atlanta in 2017. He was not successful there. Ultimately, it was Keisha Lance Bottoms who won that year, and they stressed Keisha out so bad she didn't even bother to run again. I mean, she was being called out left and right from all kinds of groups. The most hectic time of her term was around the pandemic. Yes. Ran for mayor of Atlanta in 2017. The following year, in 2018, Michael married Eva. She gave birth to their first son that same year. She ended up getting pregnant again and gave birth to their second son. Eva wanted to completely cut off all signs of Kevin McCall. So she went to file documents for her husband to adopt her daughter and changed her last name from Kevin McCall's last name to Michael Sterling's name. It's not just advice for parents, but it's an insight of...
And listen to this too, because I heard this part of it, and it was interesting wording that she used here.
About my life and kind of what I'm going through. Hopefully someone can relate and learn something from it. So for me, I just went through a name change for my firstborn, Marley Ray. So Marley was born in 2014, and I gave her her biological father's name. And after 2 months, we became estranged, and I raised her as a single mom. And then the good Lord saw fit for me to meet an amazing man, Michael Sterling, who has become my husband and the father of my later children. And so, long story short, we all have the name Sterling, and Marley's the only one with her biological father's name. And, I saw it necessary, and Mike saw it necessary to change her name. And so we've been going through the process, which I must say is not an easy process, and it's not for the faint of heart. But we've been working through it. And yesterday, I can say that thank you for the Honorable Judge Manning here in Fulton County Court granted me a name change for Marley. She is now officially and legally Marley Ray Sterling. And so she asked for all vital records to be changed, her birth certificate, her social security card, health board, everything. And for my family, it's amazing because you know what? I never really wanted my daughter to feel like odd man out. And I didn't think about it when having her, but now that I am married and I do have more children, it's, she started our family. And since, she is the head as far as the kids are concerned, I felt it necessary that she take the same name that we have. And so, that's where I'm at with it. No, I'm not down with this selfish nonsense. The way for your daughter to have the same last name.
Let's
talk about it, be about it. I paid my lawyer mom gonna have to give her to me. Marley, your daddy finna get you, baby, baby.
Although Kevin had intentions of showing up, he was right there at the courthouse. He ended up having words with one of the officers there. They tried to arrest him. One of them fell. It was just a big circus. That started because they said that Kevin was recording in the courthouse. So they arrested him and he wasn't able to even attend the hearing. Nevertheless, the name change was granted in a Georgia court. One, it was well known for years and revealed by Kevin that Eva was keeping his daughter away from him. And now she was giving her daughter her husband's last name as if she didn't have a father at all. It was pretty disrespectful. Evil Eva even admitted it herself, telling People magazine, quote, "McCall is not in my life and he's not in Marley's life. I have full custody. Michael is Marley's father. Kevin ain't nothing but a memory." And now, a couple of years later, they've only been married for like 4 full years. Eva went to the courthouse and filed for a divorce. They already separated, and Eva is asking a judge to grant her legal and primary custody of all 3 kids. Eva says that she should be the parent who has the final say on all decisions related to their kids, as she feels she's the fit and proper caregiver. Eva is also asking for child support as well as medical support, dental, all of it. You already know, since this guy adopted her daughter, he's going to be on the hook for her too. I gotta be honest though, I don't feel sorry for Michael Sterling at all.
All right, so that's kind of a extreme and kind of wild situation that happened. But it was interesting because some of the things that you said actually held true in that video. When you said it, I was like, damn, these are the same things they said. It could create that feeling of just feeling different amongst your
Yes.
siblings and the rest of the family. It is a complicated and complex process. One of the things that I thought was interesting, though, and I'll punt it over to you because I want to get your take to just that entire crazy situation. But when Eva was talking about, she said, myself and my husband decided that we should change her name and go through this adoption process. And that goes back to my original point is when you're doing it that young, is a decision that's completely excluding them. So we can talk about the finances of it all because the finance of it is simple. Fellas, there's literally 2 or 3 ways to legitimize a child. Signing the birth certificate is one legal way to legitimize a child. Adoption is another way to legitimize a child. And the third way is through a court order, a paternity test, like the video I did where Jehovah is using all his resources to avoid the paternity test. But a paternity test issued by the court that establishes paternity is the third way to establish paternity. Once you establish paternity and that child is legitimated, you're completely on the hook for child support, whether that relationship ends. I don't care if it's 2 years, 4 months. It was a story out there of a guy who adopted the child after they were married for like 6 months, divorced. Now he's on the hook for like all this child support. But those are the numbers behind it. So from a cost standpoint, you're looking at the cost to go through the adoption, the time that it takes where you're not working or making an income. That's on the front end. On the back end, if it goes well, everybody loves everything when it goes well. But if it doesn't, fellas, you legitimize that child. So just know that you're going to have to bite the bullet on that child support. But what are your initial thoughts to just kind of seeing that video?
That was crazy. Just going. Yeah, that was wild. Just thinking about even what the kids are going through,
Right.
Just different people and getting accustomed to different things and it just that's a lot for kids. That could be traumatic. But yes, I totally feel them on not wanting to feel left out. But is the kid actually stating that oh, but my name is different? And yeah, maybe a kid will notice that, but are they really complaining? Do they know enough of that at that young age? I would say no. They just don't have the maturity for that, right? And then yeah, you are letting that biological parent off the hook, right? So by kind of just allowing somebody else to adopt the child. Um, so many things to be said. So my biological father, when he found out that my mom was going to remarry, he was fine with it, even though
Right,
he
right,
had
right,
no other kids.
right.
He was just like, "Oh, that's fine." But then, also I remember having conversations with my mom. Maybe I was like preteen years, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't need him." Like she would tell me, like, I got to go to court for this and so forth. And she was upfront with me, and she was like, I just we could just like have you legally adopted. And I do remember having this conversation with her saying, yeah, but if, my stepdad does legally adopt me, then it's just letting him off the hook. And why should you be responsible for me 100%? Right.
Right.
So I think that's another reason why you should push it until a little bit older. I mean, I was really collecting child support up until I got my master's degree from my biological father.
Right. Yeah, in one of them states where if you're in school, it keeps. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
I could have got my doctorates and still would have been collected from him.
Right. Right. Hey, there's some states out there like that. I actually had a video. It was how to pay less child support, and it wasn't a video for deadbeats because paying more child support than you're supposed to is a problem and shouldn't happen. So the video wasn't geared for any of you out there who just try and get off the hook and be deadbeats. The video was geared towards you need to be paying the proper amount of child support because if you're paying too much, that's not a good thing as well. There's a set amount. So I actually did a video where I kind of went through those things. I find it interesting because in all this, if we back up, that poor first girl, I feel so bad for. But she essentially had two father figures, or was on the verge of having two father figures out of her life that she could potentially not have a relationship. All of this started as an effort to include her and make her feel welcome. And now, not once, but twice, it's kind of like, biological dad, stepdad. Like, and I don't know. Hey, knock on wood. Hopefully, she matured and, it isn't going to be an isolation thing from, the adoptive father or something to that effect. But it's just a really bad situation, and her trauma is doubled. All the kids gonna have some type of trauma, but her trauma is doubled because
For
it
sure.
essentially happened and she dealt with it, twice, which is kind of wild in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a big factor, like I said. So us in the school system, we're really big on like just picking up on things and knowing when kids are going through trauma. And technically any just a single divorce, obviously there's other events that can happen in a kid's life that's traumatic, but it's one of the biggest things that can happen for a child, that's going to impact it's called like an ACE score. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but
Mhm.
yeah. So that is a big factor when it comes to trauma in a child's life, and then it affects them in school and so forth. And again, maybe the kid felt like they didn't have a voice in all of this. So yeah, I think going back to what we talked about before, just waiting. um Also, you have to be rational, right? Because so many people, they might say, "Oh, I got a new person." Let's say I got a new husband and I want my husband to adopt, right? Like I'm over that man. But like you need to give it time,
Right.
like you need to and I feel like so many people, they might rush through to be like, "Oh no, I got a new person, like they're going to legally
Yeah.
adopt because I have my kid," right? And then the kid is too young and you just rush into that decision. I feel like it's something that needs to take a few years for you to actually process.
Right. I definitely agree. You probably should let it marinate. You need to let the new relationship marinate and the relationship with those children marinate a little bit till you can really get a footing on it. And my take
Right.
was I was talking to one of my partners about this. I was like, look, and I know no one, no, everybody thinks that their marriage is gonna last forever. You don't know it's gonna not gonna last forever until it doesn't. But generally, this is my take. If a woman married a guy who is a decent guy, adoption and all aside, a decent guy, especially if he's been there for some years and put some time in, he's gonna treat that kid as if it's his kid. I'll be damned what the court say. It doesn't make a difference whether I'm on paper or not. Like, yo, I've been here since she was like 4 and she 10 now. You know what I mean? Every day. Like, no, I'm not gonna. I know somebody like me, I wouldn't be able to just walk away and be like, oh, that relationship is over. All right, I'm gonna see these other two, and that's you. No, you've been there with them for all these years. So I think if it's a good guy, generally that guy isn't going to let an adoption dictate the type of father he's going to be, because a person like that is just a good father and going to do what he need to do anyway. You know what I mean? Whether they adopt it or not. If your father didn't adopt you and you called him years later and said, yo, dad, X, Y, and Z, you think he's not going to do it? No, of course he's going to do it because that's your pops. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how it is. So I don't think that I understand the benefits and the need for inclusiveness in the family unit, but I don't necessarily think it's a requirement. And honestly, if someone came to me and asked me if I put my attorney hat on and said, should you do it? I would probably say my general rule would probably be like, no, because of the risk associated with it. If it works out, it's great. If it doesn't, there's a lot of financial risk that's associated with it. And I think when you have step children, step parents, when you have these relationships, I feel like one of the things that we just got to accept is, because again, only 5% of people are adopting their stepchild. So 95% of people aren't. So one of the things when you enter into that relationship that you got to know going in, because I'm assuming a lot of people don't talk about it beforehand. I'm just assuming a lot of people, they may talk about it, but I don't think that's probably the norm. But I think one of the things that each person is entitled to is, hey, if we're in that 95% who aren't adopted, fortunately or unfortunately, that comes with the game of being step parents or having stepchildren. That person reserves the right to make a decision on how they want to proceed with those children who aren't biologically theirs. And that's just something that, is kind of part of the game, unfortunately. You know what I mean? If you got a guy who a type A personality, he like, you know what? Those are my kids no matter what. You can have another guy who could say the exact opposite. Well, I don't want to be attached because this was an emotional, stressful thing for me. So it could kind of go both ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm literally thinking of, I have people in my head where it's like both of those cases.
Oh,
But yeah, I completely agree. I think, if you're with a great person, no matter what, then even if something goes down, you guys split up, you go your own ways, that parent, guy or girl,
right.
is still going to be in that person's life, in that child's life. You're not going to be like, need to maybe every other weekend or whatever it may be. You're not going to have that pressure though. But I feel
Right.
like most step parents, even if they left the household, they still will take on that responsibility. Especially maybe if, let's say the stepchild and then we have my 2 siblings. Well, like on the weekend that my siblings are with my stepdad, then I could also go with my stepdad, right? So
Right.
again, I'm sure that parent wouldn't want to make that child, the older stepchild, feel neglected, to feel a certain way. They're not pressured to take that child, but like you don't want to do that to that child either.
Right. And that's kind of how I look at it. I look at it something like that. I look at it is like, I mean, personally, damn what y'all adults care about. What is the best thing to do so where the children can have the least amount of stress possible? You know what I mean? And if the best thing is, yo, I gotta take care of my kids and her, that's how I would proceed. You know what I mean? I couldn't see like, all right, I bought y'all Christmas gifts over. Nah, but I ain't got nothing for you. That's goofy behavior. That's some goofy ass behavior in my book. It
Yes.
happens though.
I
Hey,
know it does.
it happens.
Again, I'm thinking of people. It happens. Yes. It's
It
so
happens,
true.
man. But and that's funny because I want you to put your financial cap on. But that's one of the things I always say is that probably the most important financial decision that you ever make in your life. It has nothing to do with your career or what you invest in. It's the family unit that you make. if you got a family unit that's on the same page financially, y'all can not be on the same page on some stuff, but just at least with what y'all want to build, what y'all future is, what y'all finances is, those foundational things, your trajectory is unlimited. But if that initial foundation for that financial security for everything, the family is the foundation for everything. You know this more than anybody. Like if that shit is rocky, it could be problematic. So you got to be real cautious of the people who you choose. That your biggest investment is who you elect as your partner. That's really, facts. The biggest investment you're gonna make is who you decide to take as your partner. So it's something that you can't just go into blindly. You know what I mean?
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Now I want to ask you. I want to turn the page a little bit and flip it over to the finance aspect, since you do the financial literacy coaching, and I want to ask, what do you think? Because it's funny. I had this conversation where I still to this day have people, especially my people, black and brown people. I have people who say, "Oh man, the stock market is like going to Vegas, or the stock market is a scam, or investing is a scam." So, what are some of those biggest myths that you see? The top three that you see just kind of in our community, and what is the you know way you think you can circumvent those myths from an educational standpoint? And before I give it to you, because I see a lot of videos where finance content creators are like, "Yo, if you buying Gucci and this is stupid and you messing up your money," and I kind of laugh because I be like, I don't know. I personally think some people don't get it. I'm from a neighborhood where I understand it. Like the reason a lot of people do that, and the reason I want to look fly and I want to spend a bunch of my money on nice things, is because my environment is jacked up. My home is unstable. The neighborhood I'm in is unstable. The only thing that I could do to make me feel good and feel like I'm important is how I carry myself, how I look. So it's not necessarily like, that's one of those things that pet peeve me when I see them, because I'm like, it's not this stupid thing. Y'all not understanding the psychology behind it. When you come from the mud, when you clean, you feel clean. So that's why you do those things. So, it's kind of a psychological thing behind it. But what are some of the three common myths you see, and what are the educational points to rebut those three common myths?
Yeah, well, automatically I'm thinking that we're no one to judge other people, right? And
Right.
so that also bothers me too, because a lot of people come from a place like they think whatever their opinion is absolute right, and they think that that's the best decision and other people should be similar to them. A lot of finance creators too,
Right.
because some people might think, oh, well, um it's best to spend my money on traveling or whatever it may be. But what if I don't like that? What if I
Right.
rather spend my money on, you know my confidence, and part of that is how I dress or whatever it may be. Maybe
Right.
I don't want to get on a plane and go somewhere, right? So like, who are we to judge other people in that way? I think when it comes to certain myths, for sure, it's coming from a place, I believe it's really like lack of education in this space. And
Mhm,
I've been
mhm.
there myself. So people say that, oh yeah, you're not going to make maybe money in the stock market or whatever. A lot of that is coming from a lack of education, maybe because they played around with gambling too much in the stock market, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
once
Right.
you start learning the fundamentals, like, your basic financial literacy, I think that you can overcome that. A lot of it also has to do with, like you have mentioned before, psychology of money, right? So it depends, like how you grew up with money, how you perceive money, how your parents perceive money. So, for example, like people have also myths about real estate, right? Like that, real estate isn't the end all be all. And it all depends on what they perceive real estate to be. Because maybe if you watched your parents lose their house in '08, or maybe if you had a family member who was an investor lose it all during a period of time, you're going to have a different perspective than someone who was able to get in, let's say, 2012 when the market was down and they were able to get a few houses, you know?
Right,
So,
right, right.
yeah, I think those are the myths, right? That you can't make money in, let's say, real estate, or the stock market is maybe overrated, let's say, or even in terms of businesses as well. But I think it all comes down to like just that basic financial literacy and just educating yourself as much as possible, whether it's, watching these YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, reading books, just really educating your space, educating yourself, and then talking to people who are in this space to give you a different perspective.
Right. And y'all check out the info on the bottom of the screen too. That's the your website. So it has your podcast and all your travel hacks and all that cool stuff that you got going on. So I wanted to make sure, I was so in depth of talking, I forgot to hit the damn button. I wanted to make sure to hit the button and throw that up on the screen. Now let me I got one comment I wanted to read first before I forget, because I think this circles back to what our original topic was. Curious to know both of your thoughts. When the stepchild is the only child, no additional children on either side, or ability for a future, does that change your thought process? Hey, go ahead. I'm gonna let you answer that first. If the stepchild is the only child, I'm gonna let you go. Get the floor first.
Yeah, so I was that stepchild, kind of like the only child up until I was 14 years old. So my
Okay.
stepdad
So, oh
came in
yeah,
my
yeah,
life,
yeah.
yeah, when I was 5, and they were trying to have kids, and it took that long. So I was 14 before my sister came along. And I will still say, like, I was young, but at that point, I was also starting to realize, like, how my biological father was, and how
Mm-hmm.
much of, the, like, how my stepdad, how he played just this big part in my life, and he was always there for me. He never tried to make it seem like he was the disciplinarian. He was more the fun one, because I think he also wanted to, my mom was also the disciplinarian, so it's not
Right,
like
right, right, right,
she was,
right.
but I think he just never wanted to hear me say, like, well, you're not my real dad anyways. And I
Right,
think
right.
that's the fear of most step parents, right? They never want to hear those words come out of the child's mouth. So, like, he knew his position, and he was always fun, but always there for me, whatever I needed. And so, even at that point, I would say I was still open to wanting him adopt me. So
Okay.
again, it has to do with the fact that, like, I was, with him for a pretty long time. Since the age of 5, he's been around. So he has proven to me the kind of
Right.
father that he
Consistent.
was. Yeah, and then, my 2 siblings came around. They had different last names than I did. It did make me feel a little different. I will also say, so my mom, she's light skinned, so she's actually from Argentina, and my stepdad she married is Puerto Rican, so they're both light skinned. So I really felt like different, and people would ask me, even if it was just me and my mom, people would be like, "Oh, she's adopted," when it's, my biological mom looks nothing like me. And
Right.
so I wanted it, I think, even more when my 2 siblings came out like white skin,
Right,
and
right, right,
I
right.
felt it even more to be like, oh, I really do want to feel more like I never felt like I was neglected anyway, but I just wanted to feel even more part of the family, because out of the 5 of us, 4 of them have the same last name. They all look they're all the same
Right,
skin
right,
complexion. I'm
right.
different. So I did personally, I was going through a little something, feeling different.
Right, 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 and that's a fair point. I think if it's just a couple and one child, one stepchild, I don't think if everything goes according to plan and works out, is no discussion. You know what I mean? The child is going to be loved and so forth. Whether there's an adoption or not, that's just a conversation to be had at a later date, not to make it too soon. You know what I mean? Um, and I also say I think, especially again, I can only speak from perspective of a man's perspective, but yeah, it would be problematic for me if I was young and my parents unilaterally changed all of my stuff and my pops is just still out there like, nah, don't do that. Let me come to that determination on my own. But if things don't work out, hey, this is don't judge me, y'all. This is the attorney in me. I'm a risk person. I'm a risk mitigation, risk avoidance. I like to have edits in place to reduce risk. Like, fellas, if it's one child involved, this is probably the cleanest break that you'll ever be able to have smooth. Is it still going to be impactful on the child? Yes, exactly. It's going to be impactful for the child because a breakup, a divorce is a traumatizing event that impacts everybody. But if we're just looking at it from the finance standpoint, like I said before, when you play the step game, you could win the step prizes. Those prizes can be good or bad. And one of the prizes is 95% of the people aren't adopting their stepchildren. So they reserve the right to actually make a determination when they leave how involved that they want to be, because that's their right to do so. I didn't make the rules. This is what the law says. There's no legal obligation for them to do anything. So they have the rules and the leeway to make the determination on how active or not they choose or elect to be. And that could cut both ways. Fellas, ladies, it could be an inverse situation. Y'all know the deal, but I think that's my take on it. All right, now I'd like to get your take on this. I'm gonna shoot out maybe 3 or 4 topics on finance, okay? And I'm not gonna give my take. I want you to give your take first. I may jump in, I may just let it ride, okay? So, quick, rapid fire. That's how we're gonna do this. So you don't know none of these questions before. One of them I gave you. I give you the softball first, since I gave you a preview. I give you the softball first. Is the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, is it overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Underrated. Why is it underrated? See,
I
now
just
I'm
feel like
intrigued because I
not
disagree. So why is it underrated?
I feel like not enough people really know the power of it, and not enough people talk about it. Not enough people
Right.
are educated in the space. So I feel like I, I I feel like it is a big deal, you know. Nowadays when people are, at the point that they're 70 years old and and they got nothing, and they can't depend on
Right.
social
Right.
security. I just think about like how powerful this movement really is, especially when you do hear about 30-year-olds, young 40-year-olds, they're able to retire early. And so I feel like I think because if you're already in the space, you might have heard enough of it. But I feel like for most people, they still don't know about it, and so I feel like it's underrated for that reason.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'm gonna give a general attorney answer. I think it's overrated and underrated. Okay, I think the retire early part is just overrated because a lot of people who I know, I can speak for, who retire early, they just retire from their 9 to 5. They still working just as hard, just many
Mhm.
hours. If there's managing their property, if it's they're doing something. If they're making content, they're doing something. It's not like they're just lapping around and luxury. So I think the retire early part is overrated. I think the financial independence part is the part that's underrated. For me, that's the meat and potatoes of it. As of right now, knock on wood, I don't dislike what I do. So when people say retire, I be like, retire. Y'all gonna have to take me out on a gurney, bro. like no, I enjoy my job. I know that, from 45 to probably like 57, 58 are the maximum income years for most people in my profession. So you know what? I'm not gonna walk away from the game during those max years. I'm gonna go ahead. I ain't working. I'm not doing anything maybe I would look at it differently if I was working on the railroad because that's physically taxing. You know what I mean? But my job is using this up here. So for me, it's not physically taxing, and I'm not tired of it yet. So I always use the acronym. I'm more of a FIFU person, financial independent, and the FU FU is FU. I just want the financial independence. So if and when I do get tired of my job, I have the ability to say FU and walk away and do something else or turn the page. If I don't care if that's my retire early, May. I don't want to do this, but what the best job I ever had that I enjoyed was working with teenagers in a group home. Like I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed going to work every day, working with the kids. It was so dope. But doing it, I was like, man, I can't live the lifestyle that I want to provide for my family doing this. So for me, financial independence, retire early would be something like I'm still going to do something else, probably full time, but it would be something that I really enjoy. So that's kind of my take on it.
I hear you
Oh,
on that. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of my take on it. All right. So the next question is it's kind of a spinoff to this one, and we're going to turn the page to entrepreneurship. Okay. Is entrepreneurship creating your own LLC? We see it all the time. You can write off your G-Wagon, and I just bought this Lamborghini Yaris, and because it weighs over 6,000 pounds, and I seen that video, Lamborghini Yaris weighs less than 5,000 pounds, so it was straight cap. But we see all of these videos. So is entrepreneurship? Oh no, a better way to put is entrepreneurship overrated or underrated?
Whew.
Being your
Okay.
own boss. Hey, you got to be your boss. We know how all the rappers, everybody want to be a boss. So overrated or underrated?
Well, that's a tricky one. Um, you know why? Because like I never wanted to have my own business up until maybe like 2 years ago,
Right.
maybe three. So I didn't care, like I was good where I was at. Sometimes people make it seem like it's overrated, because it depends on your business, right? But a lot of entrepreneurs, they're putting in over 60 hours and maybe they weren't
Right.
doing that in their own full-time job. For me as an educator, I really have to weigh out. I do get my summers off, right? If I'm an
Right.
if I'm an entrepreneur, maybe I'm working 12 months out of the year. Maybe I'm not off for Christmas break and off spring break and off, And
Right.
so you really have to weigh in those factors. So I will say overrated. I think a lot of people talk so much about like entrepreneurship and so forth, and then it also puts pressure on other people where
Mhm.
some people they can eventually builds maybe a passive type of income just because their job is able to provide them enough money to be able to invest in other things without them
Right.
having to go the route of entrepreneurship.
Right. And I agree. I just think I always define entrepreneurship and self-employed are two different things. Most people who call themselves entrepreneurs are self-employed. That means if you don't get up
Right.
and move your feet, the money's not coming in. I define
Yep.
entrepreneurship is if you don't move your feet for 6 months, you won't lose any income coming in. To me, that's
Okay.
how I define it to make it between. So most people I think are self-employed. And I think just statistically, like I'm a dork. I like statistics and data. Statistically, most first generation millionaires aren't entrepreneurs. They're people who work in 9 to 5s and they're just making smart money moves. Early on, I was focused on, I want these doors and real estate. And I tell you, as each day, month, year goes by, I'm like, I don't really know if I want to do that. I may just want to be like, you know what? I want to maximize my income and just stash enough in investments to where my investments is doing all the work and I don't want to do anything. I don't want to manage nothing. I don't want, and even when with my properties, I don't like to be like, I know some people, they like collecting rents. I'm not doing that stuff. A tenant saw me at the house one day and I act like I was the maintenance man because I don't want them to know. I hire people to do all that stuff because I just don't like being bothered. But I think it's kind of overrated. I think it could be a great path to build wealth, but I think we should put some respect on W-2s. The money we invest that most people have to invest to even get started with a business, it comes from a W-2. So, I don't like that. I feel like a lot of times, in the finance community, everybody taking a dump on W-2 jobs. Oh, get out of that 9 to 5. Everybody trying to sell you a laptop lifestyle. In reality, people who's trying to promote that is trying to sell you a course to a laptop lifestyle that you may not be able to attain. So, as someone who put a lot of bankers in prison and prosecuted a lot of financial bad guys, you can do it through your W-2. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying entrepreneurship is bad, but don't put some respect on the W-2 because that's how you're going to get your W-2 is giving you the seeds to plant to become an entrepreneur. That's the best way I think that I could put it in my opinion. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%.
All right, so this is gonna be the I may throw a bonus one. This last one is going to be interesting. Okay. All right, because hey, we know hey, children, education, financial literacy, all of these things are important. Okay. So college, is it overrated or underrated? I like asking educators this because they be like, oh man.
Oh my God. Overrated.
Okay, okay. I'm shocked. Wow.
Really?
Overrated. Okay, expound. Go ahead. Go ahead.
My answer might have been different 5 years ago. It
Right.
might have been different before I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think nowadays, if you're going in with like a ridiculous high loan that you have to pay off for college, like okay, I'm also a math person, I'm a stats person, right? So if you're looking back at data and you're seeing how much college was back in the day and you're comparing how much average salary was, and now you're looking at what the cost of college is now and average salary, it's
Right.
ridiculous. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
exponential, right? Like it
Right.
doesn't
Right.
make sense.
Facts.
So unless you've kind of hacked away through certain scholarships, or you started investing early in 529 plans and so forth. But if you don't have any of that, then I think you really, my personal thing is, I think you have to, as a child and a parent together, they need to figure out what the ROI is on
Mm-hmm.
that loan, on that degree, right?
Right. Right.
So I don't think it's smart for people to get into a debt of $100,000 to become a teacher. It's just not smart, you know?
Right.
But yeah, there's so many other ways to educate. There's other ways to make money. I mean, as an educator, I've been in the field so I've been now in the K-12, like kindergarten to 12th grade for 10 years. And I also kind of like overlapped. I taught college for 4 years. So with my experience and with a master's degree, you would think I would be at a certain rate, like a certain pay. But it's a struggle to be in New Jersey making this kind of salary. And especially if you imagine many people my age still are paying off their loans, like it
Right.
just doesn't make sense. So you have to do what's financial. I know a lot of people say do what you love, obviously, but like you really have to think about what are all of your options. Like I wouldn't suggest like getting into a high amount of debt to become a teacher, but if that's where your heart is, and if you don't have a lot, like if you have money, you get scholarships, you get grants or whatever it may be, then you have to go that way. But you just have to think logically and rational. I do think college is overrated though.
Right. I agree. Aaron said there's a formula of cost versus of college versus the job that people can use to determine, what the ROI is on student loans. And you're 100% right though, because wages grow at like a 3% rate while the cost of college grows at. And trust me, I know because when you investigate fraud, you look at all programs, and a lot of schools, these for-profit institutions, there's schools out there who 90% of their funding comes from the federal government. There's actual rule out there that they had to create called a 90-10 rule, where they was like, at least 10% of y'all funding got to come from another source, or we not giving y'all nothing. This is how many schools were. So it get kind of crazy. I think, my son is 16. He's a junior going into his senior year. Hey, we stashed some money away for him to go to school, right? Like, okay, I don't want him to have to go through loans like I did. So stash some money away from him to go to school. Then I incentivize it. Like, yo, if you get a full scholarship and we don't got to pay nothing, I give you 10 stacks. Because the remainder of that I could go and buy my Tesla with. But I was like, I try to incentivize them. Like, hey, it's 10 stacks. All I ask is 40% of it you gotta put in a saving or investment. Whatever you do with the remainder is completely up to you. So I try to incentivize it. But my son is aware that there are certain degrees that there are certain degree programs that you will have I support with, and there's certain ones you won't. My son likes music. He makes a couple $100 a month streaming his music at 16 on Spotify and all of these things. And he may be
Wow.
in a performing at a concert in Atlanta. So I'm like, dope, that's cool. I know you like music, but this money isn't for a music degree. A music minor, you can do a music minor, but fortunately, I guess I'm blessed because he's in a STEM school for science and technology. So he kind of understands like, no, my A major has to be something like this. So I tend to say if y'all going to school, it has to be something in the math, the sciences, the professional degrees. Like when I
Absolutely.
switched my
You want
major
to be
to
an engineer. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. When I switched my major to criminal justice, I was so grateful because my professor just kept it real. He was like, "Oh, if you want to make any money, you need to go to law school." And I was like, "Okay, bet. Thanks for telling me. I'm gonna go to law school." And it just happened to work out. 6 figure student loan debt, but big hole, bigger shovel. I'm not tripping. You know what I mean? It just happened to work out, but it depends on having a plan and the effort that you're gonna put in. And my son also knows certain grades I'm not paying for. Like that first year, you come back with like some academic probation stuff. You on your own, Jack. Like no, I'm not certain stuff. I'm just not going to do. That's just kind of my position. All right, I'm gonna throw one last one out before we close this out. All right, and I just saw this article. I actually did a video talking about 50-50 relationships where husband and wife go 50-50 on the bill. This may be a separate video. I may have to cut this up and use this. Okay, because Gabby Union, I'm sure we all aware, she said we go 50-50. And this is just my perspective. I went to the comments, the comments, that's where all the trolls live. And lo and behold, I was shocked at how many women had problems with going 50-50. I was like, okay, well, I guess y'all just pay 100% of everything if you don't want. But it was a lot of people who were upset over this whole 50-50 on the bills concept because he made more than her. Now, let's think about this from a common sense standpoint because I want to make sure, I know you're familiar with it, but I want to explain it for the audience. I'm sure if they're going 50-50 on the house and something happened to where either one of them, either Gabby couldn't make that mortgage payment or D-Wade couldn't make oh, you can't make your mortgage payment? Well, I don't know what you're going to do then because I ain't paying it. I'm sure, I'm 100% positive that's not happening. But today, I like to get the facts. And when I get the facts, I understand the logic why. Everybody was caught up on the 50-50 part of it. The bigger point of that story that Gabby told was how she feels stressed because they each have separate obligations. She has some separate obligations, not sure what they are, but he has other family obligations. That was the bigger point, but people got caught up on the 50-50 aspect. So today, Dwayne Wade came out and expounded upon this is how we got here to 50-50. And I knew it before he said it. I already knew in my mind. I said, I know how they got to 50-50. It was a damn argument. Arguments always lead to stuff like that. He said, we got here because of an argument. Years ago, they were in an argument, and he said these famous words that if you utter them, it's probably going to create a lot of drama. This is my house. I paid for it. D-Wade said, this just came out. I just read it before I jumped on the live. When he said, this is my house, I paid for it, because that's like the Trump card, fellas. Man, I pay the bills around here. Who you talking to? Like, guys would want to pull that Trump card. When he said that, she looked at him and said, you'll never be able to say that again. So when they bought their house in LA, he was like, oh, I'm just going to buy it. She stopped him and said, nope. I remember that one argument we had. Here, I'm going to pay 50% of it. That way that can never be a point of argument. So the question is, and this is kind of this not more so a rapid fire question because you're going to have to give a little bit of guidance on this in your perspective. Finances in a marital relationship. Because I'm going to tell you, I did a video on it. If you're not married, don't combine your finances. It creates a legal partnership that nobody wants. And Lord forbid, if something happens to your partner and y'all bought a house, it will suck to live next to your ex-girlfriend's or your deceased girlfriend's mother. Y'all sharing the house together. It'll go bad quickly. But the question is finances in a relationship. What are your thoughts on the approaches to it? 50-50, we know whatever works for you, but what do you think in your experience? I'm just talking about your experience is the best way for a couple to be successful with the finances?
Yeah. So I personally don't agree with a 50-50 only because, you know, like if I'm just looking at my example, for example, as an educator, I might not be I'm not able to provide the same amount of money, right? I'm not able to contribute as much money as, let's say, my husband. But the fact that I'm around all summer long and we don't have to now pay for summer camp, and I'm around for spring break and Christmas break, right? Like there's other things that I'm doing because of my hours. I'm able to do before school activities, after school activities with my kids because my hours are similar to the school's schedule, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's why I'm not really for the 50-50. I think, what you could do is you could do a percentage, right? You could
Mhm.
say, well, if you make this amount of money, then you should contribute this percentage, right? So maybe it's like put 80% of your salary into this amount of money, into this joint account, and then you still have some side money for yourself. You could do
Right.
something similar to that. I personally think like it's easier just to join the finances and then you have like some separate, like, all right, this is my money, this is your money for
Right.
you to
Right.
do
Right. Right.
whatever
Right.
you want, you know?
Right.
But yeah, not the 50-50.
And I agree. That's kind of the approach. I think one of the biggest financial mistakes I made was we took over. We brought in that shacking up money habits into the marriage instead of combining things sooner. You know what I mean? Once like the trajectory, even if I broke it out in net worth from when we were doing the crazy shacking up type of finances when we first got married versus since we combined it, is night and day. It's just so much easier, so much transparency. We got our joint stuff. We got our separate account. We got our separate spending money. If you want to spend your separate money at Club Cheetahs and Carmel Thunder Strip, I don't give a damn. That's your private money. You do with it. We don't kind of check it like that. So, but I do
Hmm.
agree. I think that's the best approach because it would be goofy to go half if I make 190 racks and you made 40 racks and I'm driving a
Right.
S550 and you got a kid. Like, no, that like if it's that type of 50-50, that's some goofy stuff. You know what I mean? But if it's more a
I
portion
agree.
to I make 60%, so I pay 60%, you pay your 40%, and
Yeah.
the financial budget shouldn't take away from the way that either party is living. Now, the last question I gotta ask, and I know your response to this because you're a nice, wholesome, upstanding woman, but what are your thoughts since we're talking about this finance and relationships and because that's always a weird ass topic like what is why does it seem like and I'm not gonna say it seemed like it is because I know I talked to a bunch of I'm an attorney I talked to a bunch of women in law school and asked them and the same women now I ask them and they had the same philosophy. Why is there such a comparison from I'm gonna say from the woman's side to have a person or a spouse who has an income comparable to theirs or higher than theirs. Whatever happened to the old school approach? I was broke as hell when me and my wife met. I guess I lucked up because we both was broke as hell. So I guess that's probably the best way to do it. Two broke ass people build something together. But it seemed like we just so far removed from the days of, you know what? This person may not have this, but as long as they got some goals, some hustle, some aspiration, I know that they have a high trajectory. Why is it such a? It seems like it's such a common thing in this society to, and I see it more so because guys, we generally, there's some guys out there who maybe broke boys or something like that who worried about what a woman want or don't want. But for the most part, I can speak from what I see in female professionals because I asked them. There's this really big thing of if I have this degree, they got to have this degree. If I have this type of income, they got to at least have this income. And I've had a sister on the channel, and she said, "Well, I couldn't date a guy who made this much because I like to travel and I'm gone all the time, and he wouldn't be able to keep up with me." And my point to her was, "I hear you, but you're assuming that he's always going to want to travel with you." I always don't travel with my wife. Sometimes I'd be like, "Don't you got a trip to go on with your friends? I want to just be here left alone." I'm not a travel person. I like stuff. So I said, I think that's a. And so the scenario I gave, I said, what if the guy made $70,000 a year. He told you up front. Good guy, everything you like. But I said he told you up front, I can only do 2 trips with you a year. I don't care where we go, Paris, Prague. I could do 2 trips with you a year if you want to go overseas twice. Outside of that is outside of my budget. But if you want to go by yourself with your friends, I'm completely cool with that. But for me and the way I got my finances set up, I'm only doing these 2 international trips a year. And that was a problem. And so my point was, I said, okay, let's put this in perspective because I want you to get the full picture. When you travel right now, do you go by yourself or with your friends? And the answer was yes. I said, so what would be the difference if you found the guy who was perfect and twice a year y'all taking international trips in the lap of luxury? Then the other times you're doing what you're already doing now. You've been traveling by yourself or with your friends. What's the point? But why is there this comparison and as opposed to a mentality of I just want to find somebody who's doing the right thing with what they have. And if they're a good steward with what they have, we can build it together. What do you think is that? Is it rap videos? Is it hip hop? What is the reason for that logic?
So just like, talking to other women, I think that a lot of a lot of women feel that men are intimidated by a woman that might make more money, that might have a lot of degrees, that is very ambitious. Like it might intimidate some men, and some
Mhm.
women don't even want to deal with that. So they might feel that, well, as long as if I'm getting a guy that's already close to my high income salary or
Right,
close to
right.
like my drive or whatever it may be, then it's easier because I don't have to deal with his, y- just feeling
Insecurities.
intimidated.
Yeah,
Insecurities,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and that's a fair point because I think it cut both ways. Like, trust me. Oh Lord, please answer my prayers. I would love for my wife to make 60% of the money, and I pay my little 40%. I'd be a stay at home dad. I'd go to the gym and be baking and doing all that shit. So that is a fair point. I, I I think it cut both ways. I think you have both groups. I think you have some guys who are intimidated by that, and so they may act funny style about it. But I think you also have some women who, let's just keep it a buck, they aren't going to respect the guy, or they, like the first chance they get, they may D-Wade his ass. This is my house. I pay the bills, and he could be like, he could be like,
That's
no, she
true.
didn't. So like
Yeah,
I'm sure there's women who are the breadwinners who,
of course. And they got a big head with it. So,
yeah,
guys don't
yeah,
want to,
yeah.
yeah, I
So yeah,
wouldn't want to deal with that either.
it's just a mess out there. I guess the closing point I'm gonna say, or oh my goodness, let me see. My guy Wolverine here a little while. She'll use it as a weapon. Like yeah. I generally say a woman who makes more isn't a problem until another problem occurs. If y'all in the heat of argument, woo, that shit gonna cut deep when she say, "Man, you come home smelling like Arby's." It's gonna be a problem. But but I say that because I used to work at Arby's, so I know. But I think it's one of those things where you got both sides. You got guys who are sensitive about it and probably shouldn't be, and then you got women who probably have some issues with a guy making less, so they value money over all the other things that a person could bring to the table in a relationship. Good father, supportive, always there, loyal, fixing shit around the house. The income is more important. So at the bottom line on that issue is, the people got to have a certain amount of drive and motivation. There's way more that you can accomplish together if you work collaboratively as a team versus thinking on that's a small scale way of thinking. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it was points where I made more than my wife, then she made more than me, and now I make more than her. And I dream every night of a day where she'll catch up and make more than me so I could go back to enjoying myself and be a house dad. Yeah, but I think that's kind of where we'll leave it for today. That RBQ sandwich. Yeah, that sandwich was fire, man. I used to come back smelling like great roast beef. My wife, she didn't tell me at the time. I don't know if I told this story, but At first place, I had the place all set up. She was still in the military. She got out, she moved up, and I had the place and everything. And I was like in school, but I was working, and I had on this tight ass top flight security guard outfit. And I hated wearing that outfit because I was, I was extra skinny back then. And that tight ass security guard outfit, I got a flashlight, no gun. I literally hated that outfit. And it wasn't funny until like years later. I was telling my wife, I was like, man, I hated that outfit. She's like, man, every time I saw you walk off to work with that tight ass top flight outfit, I wanted to look at you and laugh because she was working at like Boeing or something, making way more than me. But I was, I wasn't soft about how much money she made. But it didn't bother me that she made more money. I think it was the tight ass security outfit that bothered me. If I was when I matriculated from that job and started working in the group home, I still didn't make as much money as her, but it was something, it wasn't necessarily the money thing. It was more of, I didn't feel comfortable with what I was doing. You know what I mean? I was fresh from Iraq from, shooting at people. I didn't want to have to do security in the streets of Baltimore. That shit was more dangerous than Iraq. But yo, that's it. Let me read this last comment before we check out and sign off. Matching motivation, drive, potential is more important than matching initial income. Right. Because the income could go away like it's nothing, and you still got to have somebody there who's going to support you and not crush your dreams to make you feel good about going back out there, getting on your feet. Yo, before we sign off, I want to shout out to everybody in the channel who commented. Shout out to everybody who's going to watch the video. But I really want to give a shout out to my host. I'm definitely grateful and appreciative to have you on the channel, blessing the community. As always, you're a family member of the channel. Welcome back at any time. We could talk real estate investing. We could talk bad tenants. We could talk how to kick somebody out legally. Do you want to go through all that nonsense? Before we get out of here, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you at. And I'm going to make sure to put all the contact information in the description of this video.
Yeah, so thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you for having me. You can find me mostly on IG at She Runs the Numbers. Send me a message there. We can chat. Any questions, real estate, financial literacy for kids, education wise. I'm very passionate about that. So, but yeah, thanks again for having me.
Hey, y'all take care. We appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good evening. Peace.